Hi, I'm Nancy Rathbun. Thank you for purchasing our Block of the Month Festive Tulips. We are demonstrating month 7 today. We're going to start month 7 by stitching a square and a square unit with one of our background squares and our tiny tulips. And so, just like in month 6, we'll sew diagonally from corner to corner with 2 squares on each corner. We'll trim those, press them out, and do the opposite corners to create our square and a square unit. And now I will trim those. And you'll just finger press those to the outside. And then you'll position a square on each opposite corner and do the same thing. So there's our tiny tulips square and a square block. We're going to sew sort of a half flying geese unit. We're going to take our tiny tulip and we're going to position one of our green 2 squares on top. And now we'll sew from corner to corner. We'll trim that and then we'll press towards the green. So this is step 3, how it finishes. You won't sew another square onto the corner. This is how it's going to be set aside for the next step. So here's your finished step 3. Be careful when you do this. It's important that that diagonal is going the same direction on all of these little squares, all these little rectangles. Next we're going to cut that green 1 square into 4ths like an X. So we'll line up your rotary cutter from corner to corner and take your first cut. And then we'll line it up from corner to corner again and take your second cut. This will leave you 4 triangle units. So you're going to go ahead and do this to that large background triangle as well, square. So you'll take that same size background and you'll cut it into 4ths also. Now we're going to stitch these quarter triangles together. So these will be sewn together like this shown here. Okay, so we're going to be sewing them to create a longer triangle. So the seam will be directed towards the green, and you will have 4 of these units. You can set these aside. Now we have 2 of the tiny tulip squares. These are going to be cut on the diagonal from corner to corner. Now these triangles should be the same size as the triangle units sewn in the last step here. And so these are going to be sewn together to create a square. So when you finger press this, you'll need to press this directed towards the piece triangle unit, just like this here. And this square should measure 2.5 inches. Just like that. You'll have 4 of those units. Now we're going to sew this unit and the unit from step 3 together with the tiny tulips facing each other. So it kind of creates a weird rectangle, but we'll sew those together next. Now we're going to stitch step 9. So you'll take the center square to square that you made in step 2 and 2 of these rectangle units, and you'll need to be careful on your placement. You're going to want to make sure that they're almost opposite each other. Right? So we'll sew this and wait to press it. We'll set this aside. So this is what that center unit looks like. You can set this aside. So the next step, what we'll do is we'll take our 1 7/8 warm 1 square and a background square of the same size. You're going to draw a line from corner to corner diagonally, and you're going to sew 1/4 inch on either side of this line. So this is your cutting line. Make sure you're accurate, and after you've stitched your seams, you'll cut on that line and press towards the warm 1. So we're going to make 4 of those. You can mark them all and then take them to your sewing machine. And now we'll cut them apart, and they'll be pressed towards the dark side here. So these should measure 1.5 inches, and they're going to be sewn to a background square. And you'll want to watch your positioning of the triangle. It will just look like this here. And you're going to make 8 of those. So this is what that finished unit looks like that you'll have 8 of. You're going to join 2 of those to make a little butterfly block, and that seam is going to be directed towards the triangle. So you will stitch 2 together like this, and those seams should nest really nicely in the center. That little butterfly block here. That's going to measure 2.5 inches. You're going to make 4 of those blocks. So we're still going to follow those same steps for our darker purple triangles or squares. We're going to make half square triangles. So do your marking, do your stitching, and then cut them apart to create 4 of those. You're going to do that same block with the darker purple unit by sewing one of your background squares to that half square triangle. Make 4 units that look just like this, and they're going to be sewn to the bottom of your butterfly unit. So we'll still direct that seam towards the triangle. And so you'll have 4 units that will look like this. Next we are going to diagonally stitch one of our background sections to our green section, much like we did last month, marking from corner to corner. Even though that's not a triangle or not a square unit, it's a rectangle, it'll still be the same, sewn the same way you would those other diagonal units. Trim away that excess, and you'll press towards the green on that angle. So this section will be sewn onto the side of our triangle units here. That is that unit here. We're going to finish stitching these together, and then we'll be ready to complete our block. To finish sewing this block together, so we have our units now. We have our long center unit that we stitched together previously. We have our corner squares that we've sewn together, and we have some more of those rectangle units. So those rectangle units are going to have a corner square sewn to each side, and we'll make 2, one for the top and one for the bottom row. And then we'll be ready to piece this all together. So now I have my top and my bottom units sewn together, and it's important, and you can tell that I have not been pressing these with my iron. I've just been finger pressing as I've sewn. And it's also important to note the orientation, because some of these blocks have been turned and angled so that you're getting this sort of pinwheel motion. So I have my top and bottom and my centers. Now I'm ready to sew these units together, and I'll have my finished center block, and then I'll be ready to add my star points. So here's my finished center block. Now I'm free to give this a nice press, and I still don't want to distort this, and then we'll be ready to sew on nice center triangles. Congratulations, you've finished your 7th block for our Festive Tulips Block of the Month. You're over halfway done. Stay tuned for block 8.